Hello, welcome back to another video. My name is Gemma and today we're going to get salty. So we are going to talk about the 5 worst absolute rock bottom books that I read in 2023. I actually didn't read that many bad books, but there were a few. I usually DNF before I get to that point, but all of these I did not DNF for various reasons, which we will talk about as we go through, but they were awful. They were awful. I would not recommend. As with all things bookish, my views are subjective. If you love these books, good for you. I detested them. I think they should be burned in a big bonfire. So yeah, let's just talk about them, shall we? So I have ranked them from least worst to most worst. There's only 5. So starting with my 5th most terrible book of the year, we have Real Murders by Charlaine Harris. So I feel a bit bad having this on the list because this was part of a read-along that was hosted by 2 amazing booktubers, Ange at Ange's Book Chatter and Amy at Booktube with Amy, and I absolutely adore them both as humans, but their taste in this series was questionable. So they were running a read-along for the Aurora Tea Garden series, I think it was called, and I thought, I'd like to join in with that, and I read the first one and I hated it. It's about a girl called Aurora who a murder happens and she figures it out, like murder mystery, like classic murder mystery, sort of cozy-ish vibes, I suppose. But I just thought she was really, really annoying. I thought the love element, the love interests, there were 2. It was a really short book. There were 2 love interests, were despicable humans. And yeah, I just really did not have a good time with that book, but it was pretty short and I wanted to finish it so that I could join in with the chat. So I didn't continue the series after that, clearly, because it was one of the worst books I read this year. I have heard better things about Charlaine Harris's vampire-y series that I can't remember the name of. This was her sort of first published book, so, I think she probably got better after that, but I'll need a few years to recover from the terribleness of that book. In 4th place, we have Pod by Laline Paull. So if you've been here a while, you'll know that there was a lot of chat about Pod in the spring and summer because it was longlisted and shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. And myself, Alice, and the Giant Bookshelf and Charlie Book Reads hosted a read-along of the Women's Prize. And so there was a lot of talk about this book because it is very, very Marmite. People either loved it or, as in my case, hated it passionately. Why did you hate it, Gemma, I hear you ask? Because I don't need to know about fish sex, basically. I don't need horny fish. I don't need fish rape. I don't need, fish getting drugged up and high. No. I actually quite like anthropomorphic stories. So this was told from the perspective, multiple perspectives, but the key one was a dolphin. And we sort of see her as she gets separated from her pod and ends up in a pod. She's a spinner dolphin and she ends up in a bottle-nosed pod, I think. But there are several other perspectives as we go through, including horny clams. And I feel like, from my description, you can see why I didn't like it. If that sort of thing sounds like your jam, mate, this is your book. This is your book. Was not my jam. No. But I finished it because everybody was DNFing it at the time and I wanted to know. I wanted to have a valid opinion, which I think you can't really have unless you finish a book. I finished it. My opinion is now validated. I detested the book. Next, we have My Name is Lucy Barton. the title alone, this is written by Elizabeth Strout, this is the first in a series. The title alone is a bit navel-gazy, right? Like, who gives a crap what your name is? I don't know who you are. I don't care that your name is Lucy. I certainly don't care that your surname is Barton. And this is sort of a story of a woman's life. Like a woman, I think she's like in her 30s in the first book. And it's... I mean, some people love this series, right? Some people love Elizabeth Strout. I just thought it was really boring. It's like, I really don't care, love. Like, what coat you bought today. Oh, it just... I honestly can't really remember too much about it because it was just so dull. It's been blocked from my memory. The reason I finished this one is because I was allocated it for the Booktube prize. And you're not allowed to DNF those books. So it made its way here. And I read 3 books by Elizabeth Strout because the book that was actually on the Booktube prize was the 3rd in the series. Well, 4th if you include the short stories, which I didn't because 3 Elizabeth Strouts was enough. So, yeah. Not for me. Then we move on to another... excellent choice by the Booktube prize, and I've actually included 2 books here which you could call cheating, but whatever. The Idiot and Either Or by Elif Batuman. So these are 2 books in a duology. The second one was on the Booktube prize, on my Booktube prize list, and so I wanted to read both to get the full experience, and the full experience was hell on earth. So this is about a student at university. The first book follows her first year. The second book follows her second year. So this is probably going to be a trilogy, right? Because there probably will be a 3rd year at university. And I think her mother is Turkish, or one of her parents is Turkish. I don't know. Anyway, she's got mixed heritage, and we sort of see how that affects her life at uni. But I just... honestly, it's about pretentious Harvard wankers is basically what these 2 books are about. I just, honestly, like, I really care so little about the life of students. Yeah. I was a student once. I lived it. I know what it's like. I don't need to read two books about it. No, absolutely not. And then my worst book of the year was one that I read really recently. So if you've caught my November wrap up, you'll know which book this is. But it's Fledgling by Octavia Butler. This had a lot of potential, about a girl who wakes up with amnesia and sort of discovers very quickly that she's a vampire. And we look at sort of racial intersection within vampires, but also in the wider world, and it is the premise is interesting, and the underlying themes and commentary was good, brutal but good. The bit that I couldn't stand was the paedophilia. This girl presented as an 11-year-old girl, and she was having sex with multiple adults, and I just couldn't cope with that. I don't want to read books about that. That's just my personal thing. I expect there's quite a few people who have a similar thing, but yeah, no, kids and sex should not be in the same book. Absolutely not. So that was my worst book of the year. Wouldn't recommend any of these. But luckily for you, my best books of the year is coming out next week. So I will be doing a best non-fiction and a best fiction. If you wanted to have a bit of a sneak peek at what might be on the list, I will leave my best books of the year so far from July here, and then you'll see which ones made it and which ones didn't next week, and which new books from the second half of the year made it to my list. So thank you all for joining me. It was lovely to see you, and I will see you very soon with another one. Bye guys.